think one of the things that's happened with that site over time is that originally the Peace Park was a more sort of dominant element of the site.
Yes.
The exhibition was smaller to begin with. The park,
and so,
sort of in relative terms, stood out as more important.
So the political work that the site is now doing is much more explicit through that new extension to identify, this.
Now, I mean, the Peace Park is still there,
right?
But it feels like it's kind of afterthought,
right? Exactly.
Or just a space you walk through between the old.
If you remember, we weren't even sure if they were going to make the new annex the actual
entrance to the museum,
as opposed to right.
But it's worth explaining that there was a number of buildings, and we came through what was the conventional entrance way, but it seems like having discovered that final new, which when we say it's annex, it's actually a new building that's the same size as probably the rest of the complex put together. That may be a way in which the story will be told from that way inwards.
Well, in fact, there are two entrances now because I was there last month.
So you've got a choice there.
Yes,
that's
you
quite
can come in through the one by the new annex or the old hall.
I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, just one point. When it was built and constructed in '85, it was in the midst of that, in partly a response to the textbook controversy at the time. It was clearly about identifying and reminding people of perpetrators, and so you're absolutely right. So in a way that has continued through. But the way the design of the space now with this new annex, I mean, the culmination used to be of an experience of a visitor was that long pool and then that statue of peace at the end, and these garden areas where various Japanese and other visitors would plant peace flowers, etc., etc. And I was very struck by the fact that wasn't particularly well tended. That was now almost like an afterthought, and now you pass through that into the culmination. If you go in the main way, you still go into the climax, which is victory, which is the peace won through war, and China at the forefront of that.
Absolutely.
So it has indeed moved from taking this contemplative space for visitors to sit down and think about peace and the significance of peace for this site as just a transit station towards the new annex, where you, as you remember, you go down an escalator, and then you again
as you enter this new annex,
you again become the consumer of a very explicit message, exactly. That complements the whole narrative and the whole context in which the rest of the war memory in China has been framed from the state side very nicely.
What the new annex is doing, it feels, is as if it's sort of taking over the site or imposing on the site this new narrative that the Xi Jinping regime is constructing around the war through sites everywhere in China.
Exactly.
And really that narrative of victory has nothing to do with the Nanjing Massacre.
Of course. No, exactly.
Well, it has something to do with the Nanjing Massacre in a certain sense, because if you remember, for instance, in 2014, this was also the year that the Chinese government introduced two new national memorial days, one commemorating the end of the war in China, the 3rd of September, and therefore China emerging as one of the victors from this conflict. But at the same time, they didn't want to get rid of this very explicit message of victimhood, because it was such a powerful one, and one worth remembering in this particular political context as well. So it was complemented with another Memorial Day on the 13th of December, dedicated to the Nanjing Massacre. And really, there you have these two elements that come together in the Nanjing Massacre Memorial Hall as well, in this memorial space. So on the one hand, the role of the victim, China as a victim. On the one hand, China in the role as victor on a global stage, for that matter. So one very local, and this goes very nicely together with the kind of architecture that complements all the other exhibits. You have, in the very beginning, when you enter the site, this dagger pointing to the heart of Nanjing, very much in the same way as the Nanjing Massacre went to the very heart of the city and its people.
Well, if you look at the sort of architecture of the memorial hall from above, you mean?
Exactly, yeah. So you have this very, very pointy structure. I think we talked about this exactly in this regard when we walked in there. And then the visitor is not left anymore with this message of peace, like the Statue of Peace in the end that we had talked about, but rather he or she is left with the idea of where China is supposed to be going in the future.
As a peaceful power.
Exactly, as a peaceful power.
Backed up by might.
Cool,
I mean, the final exhibit is, of course, the parades of strength.
Military.
And I think I just would say one thing or more, that it would be interesting to see what happens to the rest of the site.
Indeed.
Once you have this massive, often in museums generally, you have this massive investment in the new gallery and the new, it's colourful, it's got all the money's gone in there. And Xi Jinping's obviously had some role.
Huge investment.
Yeah, in directing the sort of narrative. It'd be interesting to see if they are still balanced, or in fact, the story starts to eat into the rest of the